There's that saying, it took 10 years to become an overnight success. What's even more important is understanding of those 10 years, how many times did they fall over and get back up?
Well, in this episode, I'm extremely fortunate to have caught up with someone who knows a thing or two about raising kids. My mentor and good friend, Nicky Rasmin.
Success for me is being aware of myself and aware of the tide going in and out, not being scared of the low tide, not being overwhelmed of the high tide, and being real enough to just be honest with myself and others.
There's plenty of absolute gems to unearth with the founder of Blueprint Coaching. She now focuses much of her time and effort into helping coach parents through the various stages, challenges, and opportunities that come with raising kids, especially as they progress through their teenage years.
Don't be afraid of exploring something and then saying it wasn't for me. There's nothing lost in getting curious. We can't be afraid of it. It's fantastic.
Nicky, welcome to Share.
Thanks for having me, Steve. It's lovely to spend time with you, to share time with you.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm looking forward to what we kind of dive into in this episode. And obviously you've been a mentor of mine through life coaching. And I know you've got a lot of passion and you've got a lot of purpose around coaching. And we're going to dive in that today. So I'm looking forward to getting your insights and reflections through that. But I'd love to start with, what's the story of Nicky Rasmin?
It's a long story. It's got lots of different tangents, and so the story is I'm highly creative, and I was a dreamer as a child. I have a dreamer teenager now, and I'm watching her and just really developing empathy for my parents' response to me. But yes, very creative, always wanted to work in fashion, went and did a full degree in design, worked my way up through the fashion industry living in Sydney, went to London and was a freelance pattern maker there, and realised that my values didn't align with the people in the industry. I was being creative, perhaps not as creative as I wanted to be. There wasn't that authentic sort of integrity to the designs because I was essentially knocking off a knockoff of a knockoff. And so that was the beginning of my insight into you can have passion, but unless you're with a tribe that's aligned to some really important values that you hold, it's never going to work. So I moved from there into creative production, which is events production, marketing production, where I've been that's been a chain or a link throughout the rest of my career as I've moved into training and coaching. So that's that side of my life. I woke up one day a number of years ago, and a student, a learner, an adult learner of mine had texted me. And she said, I'm in the evacuation centre. She was on the South Coast. It was one of those summers of terrible fires. And this is the view out the evacuation centre, which was just an blood orange sky. And she said, it still chokes me up. She said, I don't know how the house is. I hope the animals are safe. We let them free, the horses and such. And I don't know if any of my coursework will be saved on my laptop. And I sort of felt my whole world sort of choke up and felt so totally inadequate to support these learners. Yeah. And that's when I went, I need more. I need to take my training skills and my mentoring skills to a new level. And so I researched what is coaching, what can I do with coaching, and went and added that into the fold. So that's how I went from being a young fashion designer working for Trent Nathan into sort of where we are today. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting how our mind, when we're going through trauma or going through events, we can focus on something like, I don't know if my coursework's going to be saved on my laptop.
I know. And her response, that was her response, because to take on board the enormity of what else was happening and the stresses perhaps would have tipped her over the edge, and to just focus on something that was so objective.
Yeah.
rather than
Wow.
subjective was her coping mechanism. And we all do that, right?
Yeah. So talk to me about growing up, obviously, through those younger years. Were there any events or were there any people or mentors that kind of shaped you as a person?
I remember an art teacher. I mean, this isn't the nemesis of a good mentor. I remember an art teacher telling me my work was too free and messy and I had to redo an entire piece. And I was in second class. This is why we need to be so careful about our words and how powerful they are. I remember she was wearing orange. I have no idea what her name or face was, but those words cut through really significantly. And yet I had people who were really encouraging. My German teacher seemed to see us. I didn't know it at the time, but she saw us as individuals and addressed us as young adult learners before we realised that we were young adults. So important.
Yeah. It's interesting as well. Recently I wrote a post and you might have seen it around encouraging versus discouraging, right? So, and in life, it's interesting because some of the biggest discouragers for us when we're growing up, when we're going through school, in life, the byproduct can actually be that it encourages us to actually push forward. So it's a balancing act, because I think some of the things that I've achieved in my life have been achieved because people have told me I couldn't.
Yeah, it's that carrot and stick moment. Do we dangle the carrot? Do we whip with the stick? They're both powerful tools, and it so depends on the moment and the individual as to which one's going to work.
Yeah, and you look at actually people in the world, people like Richard Branson or some of the biggest celebrities or the biggest people, the billionaires out there, the people that we would hold up and say they're very successful. And they've all got these stories of their year 10 high school teacher telling them that they'll never amount to anything, or, they drop out of school, or they're in trouble with the law, and they all come from these places a lot of the time where people have told them, or people have kind of dismissed their personality or their values as a person. And it's actually those values and that personality that has actually driven them forward to actually achieve some really great things.
There's that saying, it took 10 years to become an overnight success. And I think what's even more important is understanding of those 10 years, how many times did they fall over and get back up?
Yep, that's exactly right. And you talk about an infant, right? As they're starting to learn to walk. If as human beings, when we were a baby, when we started to learn to walk and we fell over and went, oh, well, I'm not doing that again.
For me.
That's the thing though. But as we grow up and we go through life, we do, like a baby, have to keep getting up 1, 2, 200, 2,000 times before we actually start to kind of master the art of what we're doing. And that goes across all industries, that goes across all skills. Michael Jordan talks about he missed more shots than he made. Roger Federer did a commencement speech recently talking about, he won 87%, I think, of his matches, but he only won 53% of the points in his career.
I saw that. It was an incredible insight into humanity and humility.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful piece. Yeah.
So talk to me of, sorry.
Go.
What I was going to ask you was, obviously you were led to the coaching path. It was kind of a bit of a sliding door moment where you said, hang on, how do I learn more about coaching? How do I kind of really get into it? What have you developed as your philosophy when it comes to coaching?
Listen and serve. It's really very simple. Reflect, listen and serve. What do I know? What lessons have I learnt? When have I got back up after falling over that I can possibly make someone else's journey or help someone and support someone in their journey to be easier? So I used to have my why. It's really interesting. My why, I did work on why about, 10 years ago, and my why was all about to support people to learn and grow so that their tomorrow is easier than today and they can shine more brightly. And it's really interesting that everything I seem to do keeps coming back to that. It doesn't matter if I add another skill or another feather. It's really about how can I support and serve others. It's really very simple, whether I'm coaching in the kitchen, although I don't get away with it very often, I get called out, or whether I'm working with clients, or adult learners. It's really important.
Yeah. And as a mentor of mine, and obviously a number of mentors through the coaching space, we're always told, we were born with 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. We talk about, our parents spent so long teaching us how to walk and keep getting back up and encouraging, but we never spent any time teaching our children to just be quiet and listen. We were teaching them, I'm still telling my kids, you're doing well, not you're doing good, and picking them up on nuances in the English language, but I'm never saying to them, what would it be like just to not say anything? What are you hearing?
Yeah. So talk to me, obviously you have a focus and a passion for parental coaching. So talk to me about that.
So it really developed into a response of the space that I grew up in, my family, which is a very loving family. And a little backstory, I guess, if we reflect on my parents were born at the beginning or in the middle of World War II. They were brought up by military men and women who were in the Wrens or women who were volunteering. And so it was a
common story.
Yeah, common story for most of us in this age bracket. And so there was very much so, I was brought up in a space where you weren't seen and you weren't heard, and acknowledgement was very limited, not because of lack of love, just a lack of awareness around alternatives. And so I didn't feel seen and heard, and that I had mental health problems as a child, and I had that continued in to my adult life that I had to deal with, and I was determined to deal with it. And then it sort of blossomed back when I got postnatal depression with my firstborn. And I was horrified when I sort of woke up one day and realised that I was automatically going into parenting, the parenting style that I'd been exposed to as a child, as a default pattern as opposed to a choice. And I could see myself doing things that I had resented as a child, and I absolutely needed to change that. I needed to do better. And so I started on a journey of developing and reading and learning, which sort of the coaching only further went to, I guess, help me highlight the strengths that I brought to the table, and also the lessons and reflections on other opportunities to grow. And everyone I speak to they're all sharing the same challenges. They've either got a child who gets to a certain age and they lock themselves in their room and never come out, or they get to a certain age where they walk out the front door every morning and they don't come home until midnight, and you don't know where they are and are they safe. Or you have the child who sort of seems to sort of plod along, but are they really enjoying themselves? Are they happy? Are they healthy? And as parents, we're joined by this common wish and desire for our children to be happy and healthy. We're not always aware of how we can do it or to support them on their journey. And for me, it stemmed back from that piece that I have a whole lot of comrades who are bringing up teenagers right now. We're in the first generation of bringing up teenagers where both parents are working as a dominant trend. We're exposed to all sorts of new language types and all sorts of new ways of thinking. We need to absorb that and work with our teens as they go through this time so that we can support them. They're going through the incredible change. This is the first teenage generation that has a phone in their hands the entire time.
Yep.
So we're going through change and they're going through change, and they look to us And in many cases, we don't know how to actively role model because leadership from our parents was very authoritarian in military style, which we needed. We needed that in the military, and we still do need it in the military. There are many instances where that works really well. Don't cross the road, there's a car coming. Really good. It's not going to work for teenagers all the time.
Yeah.
Or parents.
So when you're talking about parental coaching and working with parents and working with kids and how they can better communicate, how much of your philosophy has been based on your own personal experience to a mum of two teenagers?
So I think I probably made all the mistakes and some. I'm totally the guinea pig for my own work. I mean, I do a lot of reading. I'm constantly, I don't pretend to know everything at any given point in time. But yeah, my philosophy has been, okay, so if this is this, that explains why I didn't respond and I didn't grow with my strengths as a child, because this is my style of learning and this is my love language and this is who I was as a child and who I am now. So with that knowledge of supporting and being there and listening, how can I listen to my children and respond to them as that unique individual and then go from there? And it's like, I'm so proud of my kids. They're great kids. They're fantastic. And we all make mistakes, and it's all about just putting our hands up and saying, oh my God, I think I made a mistake. Yeah, and also celebrating when you don't.
Yeah. And I think one of the interesting thing is a dad to two teenage boys, and also having three older kids that I saw go through their teenage years as well, which probably helped me in somewhat to kind of deal with the teenage years of two boys now. But really, as parents, it's really about being there to support our kids, right? And support them in whatever path they're drawn to, because I think as parents and parents can very much have a thought on where they think their kids need to be and what they need to do and how they need to act and what they need to say and what occupation they're going to get into and what university they're going to get into and what sport they're going to play and how far they're going to go with that sport, and that they've got to be in the A team and they've got to do all these things, right? And they put all these expectations and they put all these pressures on the kids. But at the end of the day, you know, one of my youngest son, Riley, he's actually changed his course of what he's interested in many times, and we just support him in that. We don't say, oh, you're not doing that now, or, oh, you should be doing this. It's about, okay, you want to do this? Cool. We're going to support you in that, because that very thing could be the thing that lights up his life and brings out that passion in him that he can kind of unleash that talent into the world.
Absolutely. And that sort of reflects on, I used to watch my husband coach the kids' football teams. And he used to say, choices, we need choices on the field. Who's he going to pass to? He needs choices. And I think that's such a great philosophy to have in life. And we always say to the kids, just explore your choices, because all you need is choices. That path you go down could lead to that one discussion with that incredible person who mentions something that lights the spark and takes you going. You know, it takes you somewhere. So there's nothing lost in getting curious. In fact, I think curiosity is one of my values. And I think curiosity is something that we can't be afraid of it. It's fantastic.
No.
Don't be afraid of it, exploring something and then saying it wasn't for me. I did an entire degree and then worked my way up to being, you know, at the top of an industry to wake up and say it wasn't for me. Am I better for it? Absolutely. Did it help me find my strengths? 100%. Would I change anything? Hell no. We're only going to discourage curiosity by expecting people to find their path the first gate they open.
Well, paths connect to other paths, right? I always say you meet someone. Everyone you meet for a reason, right? Every person you bump into, every job that you have, every experience, every event that you visit, every opportunity that comes your way, there is a reason that you've got that opportunity. You've had that meeting, that you've met that person, that you've attended that event. What is the reason? Who knows? And sometimes you sit there and go, what? I don't know what the reason is. But 5, 10, 15 years down the track, you come across this person and you go, that was the reason.
Yeah. I taught that person years ago so that she could help turn on the switch that said, you need more to serve more. That was the gift she gave me. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Now, talking about our experiences growing up and how our parents shape our parenting styles, talk to me about how do we as parents and how do listeners really kind of have that awareness of, this is how I am a parent because of how I was parented, and how I can shift and how I can kind of be more aware as a parent to actually upskill, I suppose, and relearn how to be a parent?
Yeah, great question. So that starts with reflection. So how was I parented? And to really be honest about that. What was the good, the bad, and the ugly? What were the strengths that my parents brought to the table? What were the opportunities like that I'd like to change? And then really step into empathy for our parents. So empathetically stand in their shoes. What knowledge did they have? What culture were they living in? Many of our parents were certainly sitting in they'd come through a time of scarcity. So for them, scarcity mindset, you won't have job security, you won't earn enough, you won't get ahead, was a really big piece for them, because they were brought up by people who were literally going to war and may not come home. There was no security. And so how does that reflect on us, and how relevant is that for our values now? Yes, we need a roof over our head, we need to feel safe, but a roof is quite different. It's no longer a quarter-acre block in the suburbs. It can be very, very different.
Yeah.
And so starting with the reflection, asking yourself and being quite real about what your values are as a human. So for me, it's creativity and curiosity, and there's a whole lot of honesty and integrity there. I don't think that honesty was something that we had from our parents' generation to us. There was a certain amount of hold it together, everything's going to be good. We can't show the kids that there may be mortgage stress, there may be business stress, that our careers are maybe pretty average and we feel trapped in it. And entrepreneurialism wasn't a big thing in the 80s. I think only one business in 10 survived more than 10 years in the SME, small to medium enterprise space. So it's about that reality check. What was it like for them? How did they portray that? How much of that have I honestly inherited as a belief at a subconscious level that I'm not addressing? And that's the biggest one. What am I doing on autopilot? And I have to create an awareness around that so that I stop saying that thing or going down that path. Because it's very difficult to become aware of a subconscious piece that we've picked up in our formative years under the age of 7. So blame is a really big one for me. We don't have blame in the house. And blame is it weevils away. It's a nasty, nasty piece. And what happens with blame is I know that you would be aware, is that when we blame, our prefrontal cortex, the beautiful part of our brain that does all the logical, creative, exploratory work, it just basically shuts down. It says, we've got a solution. We've blamed. We're not going to go there. There's no more exploration required, right? So we stop being solution hunters to whatever we're doing, and it stops being an opportunity. And then the person who has been blamed quite often will go into the amygdala for a fight, fright, freeze response, and then has extraordinary difficulty having any empathy for the person who is blaming. So we've got this complete separation going on in the family unit where one person feels attacked and therefore can't develop empathy for what's happening, and the other person is responding perhaps at a subconscious level because they don't even realise they're blaming with their language, and is unable to creatively problem solve their way out of that response and into a new behaviour. It's just a train wreck. And it's just, it's those little things where you've then got to have the courage to reflect and have that open conversation. What did I do? What can I do? And it's what did I do as in recognising an opportunity, not to then layer more judgment or negative emotion onto it. It's done with great compassion and softness.
I think in life as well, you know, like a lot of people, and I say this to, you know, people that I train or I'm working with, and I say to them, I may be coaching you, but I'm not an expert, right? A teacher at a school may have qualifications and may have done study, but they're still learning. They're not an expert either. They may know more, they may have more experience than others, and that's great, but they're not an expert. And our kids are not experts. As parents, we're not experts, right? And I've said to my kids in recent years, you know, where I say to them, and I've apologized for being a parent as they grew up, saying, I didn't know how to manage my emotions. I didn't know how to be a dad. I know now, and I reflect back and I go, there were probably things as a parent and as a dad I'm not proud of. But I want you to know, throughout the whole time being your dad, I have been working to be the best dad that I can be, right? But like all of us in life, we have to make mistakes, because if we don't make mistakes, we don't learn.
No.
But it is that reflection, it is that awareness, and, you know, a lot of self-reflection through the mental health journey that I've had over the recent years has been kind of, what is the kind of dad I want to be? What is the kind of partner I want to be? What is the kind of human being I want to be? And a lot of that self-reflection, you kind of go, wow. And I've actually said to my mum, you know, sometimes when I say something to my boys, and, you know, I'll go, oh, did I do that to my mum? Did I do that? And I catch up for a coffee with my mum and I say, Mum, was I hard to get out of bed to go to school when I was a teenager, right?
Yes.
And she's like, yeah, you were. And I was like, really? And I don't know how many times, and my mum will be laughing listening to this, but I keep saying to my mum, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know, and it's interesting as well, you know, in probably the last 5 or 6 years of that self-reflection, it's my boys laugh at it, but I remember one day I was sitting there and I was going, that is exactly something I would have done as a kid, or is it that is exactly what I would do. And I'd go, hey, stop acting like your father. And the first time I said it, they looked at me and went, but you're our dad. And I went, yes, stop acting like me, right? But having that humor and having that vulnerability to go, hey, I know how I was, I know how I am now, and I know you're going to pick up values and traits and stuff from me as your parent, but that's okay. But that doesn't mean you have to remain that way. It doesn't mean you have to live that way. And I think when we talk about our parents, and I look at my parents, two amazing human beings. My dad's very generous, humorous. I get a lot of my dad jokes from him. My boys and everyone close to me kind of roll their eyes on that one. So I can thank Dad for that.
It's a great gift, isn't it?
His lived experience was growing up in a family that was entrenched in the Salvation Army. And, you know, there was very much a service. And that's, I've got that from my dad, you know. There's traits in my dad and there's traits in my mum that you either attach yourself and go, yep, I want that trait, and I kind of want to promote that, and I want part of that part of my life. But our parents also do certain things or teach us certain things that we kind of go, no, I want better, or I want to be different to that, right? And that's important to have that awareness growing up, not just when you're younger going through your teenage years, but, I've just turned 40 and, into many years, I will continue to reflect and go, okay, what kind of dad do I want to be? And what do I want to be remembered? And what happened to me growing up, or what happened through my life? And I'm seeing how people view my dad or my mum, and how do I want to be viewed? How do I want to be viewed long after I've left the earth?
Yeah, how do I want to be remembered?
Yep, that's a really key thing. Nicky, can I ask you, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing out there for parents? And I could probably make a big long list for you. But what are some of the top things out there at the moment that people are saying to you, Nicky, I'm tearing my hair out, please help me?
Yeah, it's that piece around the phone and device exposure. That's a really big one. And I've just developed a piece on that. But again, it starts with us. It so starts with us. It's parents saying, I'm really worried about my teenager. It's like, okay, so what do you do at night? Oh, I sit on the couch and scroll on the phone.
Do what I say, not what I do.
Yeah, that's right. And it's that role modelling piece. And my kids couldn't stand it when I first implemented it. It was about 9:30. It was 9 o'clock and then it slid to 9:30. Everyone gets their phones and they put them downstairs in the lounge room on the charger, and there are no phones overnight in the bedroom. And that's been the case for years now. I have a 19-year-old now. I don't tell him what to do. I'm there to only give my 2 cents when he asks, and be there as a backstop. But yeah, I still hear him get up and put the phone downstairs.
Wow.
It's not at 9:30, but it's it's a habit now that's a healthy habit.
Yeah.
And so that exposure to that means exposure to messages that are curated messages about life, that aren't realistic messages about life. We're essentially all art exhibition curators. We're curating what we want people to see, and it's not based in reality. So
I was interviewing a guest.
Yeah, go.
I was interviewing a guest recently, and he was talking about how he does similar, so his kids put all of them in the kitchen, and at night there's no devices, at least an hour and a half before they go to bed, and they're all in the kitchen. And he said he got up to get a drink of water one night, and he opened the fridge and the phones were vibrating, right? And he looked at the phones, and there's all these Snapchat notifications and everything from their friends at 1, 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the morning, all these, and it's just like that can't be healthy, right? And it really, to me, really kind of showed how much of a problem devices and technology, social media is in today's world.
Yeah, I remember an instance where my daughter had a girlfriend over for dinner, and we all sat at the table. We don't eat on the couch. That's not to say we're not a perfect family, Steve. Like we're a hot mess just as much as anyone else, but we try to have this moment in time where we connect over dinner, because our lives are really busy, and so it's the one time in the day where we all say, okay, how was everyone's day? We do a gratitude practice. What's the best part of everyone's day? What's everyone? Who needs the car? Who's got sport? Who's got an assignment? Who's got, all of that sort of stuff that is the logistics planning. And so, and this girl turned up, and I think she was surprised that we set the table and we all sat down. But she sat down and she put a phone next to her on the table. And I looked at Amy, and Amy's eyes were like, don't say anything, Mum, please. Don't be uncool. Please don't say anything. So I was like, not saying anything. And she took a photo of dinner. And I was just amazed at the how quickly we slide from one end of the spectrum to the other. We're only 2 steps away from because that connection time is so important. Just connecting and connecting on having an environment where you can connect on their terms. That's that next piece that everyone's saying. I'm so disconnected from my parents, from my kids. I'm so disconnected from them. They don't want to talk to me. They don't want to do anything. Have you listened to them? Have you said, good morning, darling? How's your day looking? Without saying, you didn't unpack the dishwasher, your clothes are still on the bathroom floor. You told me you'd wash the car last weekend and you haven't. If you want to get your peas, you need to wash the car. You know, all of that sort of, no, just leave it. Just say, how's your day looking?
Yep. And it's interesting though, because, you know, like, and I laugh because, and I'm sure you've seen it on social media, and I laugh with it with my boys, you know, it's like speaking to texting your teenager is like texting someone that's just not interested in you at all.
No, they're just about to break up with you. Yeah, I really, really love you. I'm so proud of you. And you just get you're lucky if you get a poo emoji back, because even that's not cool to drop an emoji anymore. It's
you just get okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thanks. Yep. Great.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome.
But it's not about. That's the unconditional piece. I remember when my kids started the change, you know, hitting puberty, and I used to get, I hate you. And I used to say, that's okay right now. I'm going to keep loving you for the rest of my life, regardless. And I just leave it. There's nothing to come back to when you say that's okay to feel the feels. I'm just going to keep loving you through all that feel.
Yep. The best way to combat hate is love.
Yeah, I'm loving you through your frustration. I'm not even going to name it, because for me to name that as anything but hate would be disrespecting where you are right now. I can think inside my head, gee, you're frustrated. Wow. At another time we can maybe connect over this, but right now I'm just going to pour the love back and then just give you space and see what happens.
Before we get back into the episode, from time to time you might have a burning question, a guest recommendation, a comment, or some feedback, which I always appreciate. If so, I'd love to continue the conversation after this episode, so let's connect. I'm easy to find, but the best place to engage and connect is on Instagram, @TheSteveHodgson. But that's enough from me. Let's get back into the episode. Yeah. Through our journey, Nicky, as parents, as we all know, and I'm sure there's a lot of parents listening to this now, but as parents, when we go through a lot of those experiences and we hear what our teenagers say to us and our kids say to us, at times we can feel like we're failing. You know, how do we overcome that as parents?
I remember one of those most awesome days in life where everything was going wrong and everything I touched with the kids was just going to shiatsu, right? And I just in frustration went, this is the first time I've parented a 14-year-old, you know. You're not a piece of IKEA furniture. You didn't come with instructions. Help me. Because I just couldn't understand why I just wasn't good enough in my mind. I felt like a failure. Yep. And their little faces were the honesty of that vulnerability of I've got no idea what I'm doing here was quite a door opener for all of us, which comes back to that, you know, reflection that I had that our parents would have never said that. I think I grew up thinking you're going to hit 25 and everything's going to fall into place and you are so going to know what life is. And I got to 25 and I went, oh, maybe it's 30 for me. And I got to 30 and I went, no, this can't be it. So that, just being vulnerable enough to say, hey, we're not, and you think you're getting you got it right with the first one. You go, okay, I've nailed it. I understand the first child. Okay, we're getting through this. Well, the second one's not going to be the same as the first one, neither is the third, fourth, fifth. And so every beautiful soul who comes through your family unit as part of it is a unique set of challenges, and they're going to have a different learning style. They might be highly visual, highly auditory. They might think differently and have some sort of incredible diversity superpower that you need to recognize and nurture and grow with. And so you need an IKEA instruction book for each one of them, but none of them come with one.
No, and And like an IKEA, sometimes maybe there's a screw missing sometimes, and there's a piece missing, or there's two left over, and you go, that'll be okay.
Yeah, should be right.
I'll sit on that one day and I'll break it, or I'll fall off it or something like that, and I'll go, that's where that screw was. But I actually think they sit in the factory and they go, we're just going to put some extra pieces in.
That's right. Let's really make someone's day.
Now, I wanted to ask you, I've always had an approach, and Trace has always had the approach as well, that we really focus on the mental health of our children when it comes to school, when it comes to life. And it's interesting speaking to teachers, speaking to principals, and the journey of our two teenage boys as well. There is a real issue with absenteeism at schools, and kids not wanting to go to school. And it's interesting, I said to a teacher not long ago, I said, you're really putting a focus on kids attending school, but can we put a focus on why the kids don't want to attend school?
Yeah.
Let's turn this around. You're putting it on it's a problem with the children or the child. It's actually not. It's actually a problem. Like if you've got a workplace, right, a business, and people don't want to come to work and people resign, and you have a really bad retention rate and the productivity is down, the results are down. Now, do you sit there and go, it's all their problem? Why are all these team members? Yeah. Why is there the problem, right? Now, our education system is broken. I don't care wherever you look at it. I think it's completely broken. And
it's
we
written
focus
for a different day and age, isn't it? It's just
It
not.
It is. You know, it's like it's the, you know, like the square peg, you know, like round hole. It's just, we're wanting our kids to be unique and be their individual self and unleash their personalities and everything. But we're going to put you in the same classroom with the same kids, teaching the same curriculum. And I know there is different systems out there that are changing that, and there's different school setups, and we are getting a lot better at it. But, you know, things have to change massively. But for me, I've always focused on if our son hasn't felt great about something, or either of our sons hasn't felt great about something or hasn't felt right, I'm happy for them to stay home, right? Now, it's not day after day after day, but it's about how do we get these kids to interact more? So I'd love to know your approach, how your view on how you have managed that with your kids and how you're seeing that kind of play out in society.
Great observation and question combined, Steve. So this comes back to a real fundamental piece that I like to work on, and that is that our kids aren't broken. We just need to adjust the way we communicate and work with them, right?
Love it.
I get parents say, can you fix my kid? Your kid doesn't need fixing. God, they're beautiful. Okay, we just need to adjust and shift what we're doing, because there's this, you know, there's the fundamental need of a human is that they need to feel safe. They need to feel loved and belonging. And those two things, well, loved and belonging sort of group together. And so safety is yes, we've got a roof over our head, great. Safety is also psychological safety as well as physical safety, the knowledge that we can get through together regardless. So that resilience piece is a part of that safety piece. But that safety piece is also comes back to being acknowledged and that belonging. So if you don't, it comes back to when we were cavemen. If you didn't belong to a tribe, your T-Rex would eat you when you went out to get the water. Or if the woman didn't belong to a tribe, then as she lay and gave birth, a dinosaur would come and get you, or something would happen. So we've got this fundamental need to be part of a tribe. It's prehistoric. And to feel like we belong means we need to be seen and heard as individuals. So you've got a whole lot of teenagers who are wanting to belong to a tribe. They get to a certain point in their lives where they've belonged to their family tribe by default, but now they're blossoming into their own little unique individuals. They've got amazing hormones going through their brains that are making them slightly irrational. Their prefrontal cortex has gone off to Mars for a couple of years. You get flashes of brilliance combined with someone who can't tie their shoelaces. And so they're really struggling to feel confident within themselves because they don't understand the brain fog comes and goes and it will clear and everything's great. So they're struggling to feel great. They don't feel seen and heard as this new individual, but they have a sense that they're becoming something new, and they know that they want to be seen as more than the daughter or the son. They want to be seen as the individual. And we've got a whole lot of parents, teachers, people in society who don't say, I see you for who you are, and gosh, I accept you for everything that's going on right now, with greatest amount of empathy and compassion. And that leads to, I don't want to go to school because I don't feel part of a tribe at school, because everyone's in fight, flight, freeze because they're all having hormone moments and they can't, that's a really difficult situation. And teachers, I don't think, are trained adequately to navigate that system and navigate that part of the teenager's journey. So if they don't belong to a tribe at school, they don't want to go. If they find a tribe outside of the home that gives them more or greater acceptance than the parents, then that's a teenager who leaves on the bus and for days and doesn't answer the phone and doesn't have a problem with it. Or we have a teenager who locks themselves in their room and has a fantasy world where they're acknowledged and seen and heard and part of a tribe that is a virtual tribe that may or may not give them that real, connection with integrity. And so as teachers or trainers and mentors in the space, we need to be able to start seeing people for who they are. And if someone's having a huge hormone day, to not belittle them or put pressure on them to do what they did yesterday, to understand that their learning's going to be up and down and all over the place, and to understand that they're really developing, whether they're highly visual or highly auditory or kinesthetic, or they've got a read-writing preference, and that may shift and change a little. It won't much, but we have to give them grace, with grace, and understand and just be there. And I think, a lot of parents say, I don't know where my kid goes. Your kid goes to where they feel they belong.
Yep.
And so we need to really work on a culture at home where they feel they belong. And then we need to encourage them. If a child or a teenager keeps leaving the home, have a really big, long look at yourself. As a parent, what am I doing that they don't feel seen or heard or acknowledged? Or is there a lack of safety because they don't belong? And that's a really hard one. That's a big, super hard one. That's one that you have to do with support, I think.
Yeah. I'm guessing, Nicky, though, as well, as a parental coach and a parenting coach, how many parents do you start working with that say, so I just need them to understand and I just need them to change, and you're going to teach me how to fix them, aren't you?
Oh, Steve, it's before we even get to that, they say, can I send my teenager to you? No.
I got two of my own.
Thank you.
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah. I got enough washing. You should see it. It's everywhere. Yeah, you're right. It's that lack of awareness piece that is the biggest barrier for parents, because once we start down the awareness piece, and it doesn't matter whether you start working with a parenting coach or a bestie who's on the same journey or someone who's 2 weeks ahead of you, it's a really tough journey to go down and say, that's a bit ugly. That mirror is really difficult to look in. But it's what we have to do.
But society is, we're all supposed to be perfect, right? Like we go to a job interview and we show up as this perfect person. We don't sit there and go, look, before I start the interview, I just really want to talk about some of the things that I may not do well. But here are all the things that I do well. But we just show up and we show this perfect person. Yeah. And it's like, none of us are perfect. And I always say, I love saying it, that we'll we live and we die as a work in progress.
Oh, 100%. I've got canvases that will never, ever be a finished piece of art ever in my life, right? And one of them's called my mental health canvas because I just paint over the top of it and I just keep going and going and going. And one day the entire thing's going to be so thick it won't matter. But it's just a way of expressing and getting stuff out so that then I can look at it and go, ooh, okay, right. It's another form of reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a strong message that in life around how powerful it is to get things out, to communicate. I did a presentation yesterday at my mum's retirement village and we were talking about generational. I stood up there and I said, because one of the ladies asked, she said, I think she's about 85. And she said to me, I just want to ask a question. Do we still have this barrier of shame and embarrassment for people to kind of seek help when it comes to mental health? And I said, yep. And I said, look, I'm going to share something. I said, we're not in the 1950s, 60s, 70s. We're in 2024. And I said, you can like my opinion or not. And I said, but from a male perspective, we all think, we've got to be tough and we've got to have this armor on and we can't show our feelings and stuff like that. And I said, I said to the guys in the room, I said, guys, we're in 2024. I said, there is help out there. You don't have to hold it all in. You don't have to keep everything in. You don't have to protect yourself. There is people there that you can talk to. There's services, there's support people that can actually help you in whatever you're going through. And similarly, men and women both have those support networks, right? But from a male perspective, it's a lot been generational, this whole holding on to because their dads were it. And their dads were it, and you couldn't be weak. You couldn't show vulnerability, right? And I suppose from a parenting perspective as well is that it's both parents have got to be on the same page, right? You can't have one that wants to be vulnerable and compassionate and then another one that's kind of just eroding the trust that the one parent's trying to build.
Yeah. I only have safety with dad and mum's still holding on to the stiff upper lip or vice versa. It doesn't work. It's got to be it's got to be that. I mean, we're all going to have moments, right? There's moments where mum's only 20% and dad's 80%, and there's moments where or whatever your family looks like, one dad might be 50% and the other dad might be 50% some days, and then other days it topples over to one side or the other. It's a partnership. And I'm wondering how good we are at developing partnerships that are strong enough to go through raising teens, because it's that's a whole career path that you don't actually know you're taking on. But I'm wondering how much have we learnt and how good are we at communicating in marriages, because we've still got this lack of being able to be vulnerable. Yeah. And it's...
And a lack of consistency. And then the consistency, people talk about the good cop, the bad cop, but good cop and bad cop is born from inconsistency.
Absolutely. I mean, my daughter still goes to my dad when she wants Ben and Jerry's. Don't get me wrong. Like, we each have our roles to play. Yeah. And they still talk about when I made them sit through that sugar movie or whatever it was. So, we all have our passions. What's really interesting is that now, and I was reading this morning, if you're our generation, many women waited until they were 30 before they had children, 35, perfectly normal to have your baby at 40. Right, picture this. Women these days are hitting perimenopause and menopause at the same time that their daughter is hitting puberty. And we wonder why we've got this explosion of hot mess in our house. We talk about puberty. We know what puberty is. We know what's happening. We sort of remember it was really difficult. But because our prefrontal cortex was repruning, we don't have a great memory of the day-to-day experience of brain fog, etc. And then we hit perimenopause/menopause and we're wondering why we can't cope. We're not sleeping properly. We're exhausted. We've already got decision fatigue. And our doctors I read this morning, are incredibly under-resourced with information or insight or knowledge to support women through this. And so we've got this second layer that comes on top of our generation of raising teenagers, where the mum's going through it all again and she can't think logically and she's fatigued and she can't tie her shoelaces again. You know, she's going back to it. And so no wonder we've got this clash constantly, because no one knows what's going on. No one understands why mummy grew a dinosaur tail again. And it's all gone back to something that we vowed we never have.
Yep.
All because, you know, this generation of parents we're having children later, we're having careers, we're traveling, we're exploring choices. Moving forward, there'll be a lot greater insight. But again, this is a bit of a first.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's very interesting, and I think that plays a big part in the world. It, you know, even from a relationship perspective, you know, you look at separation and divorce statistics. You know, between 45 and 60 is where it is, and it's because for men and women, there's things going on. There's emotions going on. There's kids leaving home and the emotion of empty nests. There's the emotion of maybe career changes. And you kind of, it's an evolving piece on many levels, I suppose, when you're going through that kind of period. And it's a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. Because we're riding on a wave of joy and excitement when we're first in a relationship. Then we settle down into something, but we're two working people trying to make it work, really busy lives. The kids come along and we realise we never knew fatigue until we knew kids, right? And so then you're sort of riding the wave of just, I'm exhausted. And you get to teenager and you think, okay, this is going to get easier. But then all of a sudden it gets harder again. And when's the break? Yeah.
Peaks and valleys. One of my favourite books.
You know, I always talk about the tide. You know, the tide comes in and the waves are crashing and the salt spray is gorgeous and the colours in the surf are just so alluring and it's mesmerising. And that's the ride of, you know, euphoria that we have when everything's happening and you know, we might be able to think creatively and our work's fantastic and we have all of that amazing, you know, adrenaline or in our systems, or we're getting a dopamine hit from achieving. And then the tide goes out because it has to. And there's this sort of soft quietness. And how many of us allow ourselves and our teenagers or partners to have that soft, quiet, low tide where the energy is completely different. And it's okay to be told it's okay, the tide's out. And when the tide's out, that's the time where you go for a gentle walk to look at the beautiful shells and reflect. That's the time where you look in the rock pools because they disappear when there's huge tides. See the colour and the joy and have faith that the tide's going to come back in.
Yep. And I suppose at that time as well, I think, you know, and I know having a 15 and a 17-year-old's just got his license.
Yeah.
So he's more independent now and he's driving his brother around as well. And there's a lot of pressure that's been taken off us. The 17-year-old's about to finish year 12. And I sit there and I go, over the next few years, you've got to change we've had a purpose. When your kids live with you, you know what your purpose is. And then once your kids kind of go out into the big bad world themselves, right, and they start living their own lives with their own partners and own families, it's like, oh, hang on, I've had this purpose for 2 decades. What do I do now?
How do I navigate?
And you've got to kind of navigate and adapt to, okay, what's the experience now and how do I have to be as a parent? How do I have to be as a human being? And also, you know, a lot of the time through having kids, a lot of people go, oh, when they grow up, I'll be able to this, I'll be able to that, right? I see it very similar to when COVID hit, right? We all say, oh, if only I had the time to clean out the garage, if only I had the time to sort out that study room, if only I had this time, right? And then COVID came, we were locked in our homes for days on end, and most of us sat and watched Netflix, right? It wasn't time that we needed. We just didn't want to do it.
No, that's right. Because who wants to?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's exactly right.
Yeah. So what does
life's
parenting
interesting.
look like? What does partnership look like? Because for those relationships that do survive to the end of teenage years, through all of the teenage stresses and the job change stresses and the ageism that starts to creep into our professional work life, and then, you know, if you're in a relationship with a woman, then menopause kicks in and you've got this crazy monster sleeping next to you, and then the kids leave and that purpose that linked the house, it sort of falls away. You have to reinvent yourself as parents of adults and as adults who don't have dependents anymore. It's a biggie. And it's bloody scary, Steve. You know, I burst into tears the other morning. My son came downstairs in his full professional uniform to go, because he goes on a placement for university, and he's came down, and I said, oh, and I like, you know, I joke about it. I said, oh my God, I think the umbilical cord just got cut, and I burst into tears and threw my arms around him, and he went, oh God, Mum, you know, I think you got to be so raw and real about it. It's like, I am so proud of you, but oh my God, I'm so aching. And I say that to them. I'm so proud of you, but I'm also aching.
Yeah.
So when you leave home, you will come home for dinner every now and then, won't you? And they go, yes.
No, it's good. Nicky, can I ask you, throughout your life, you know, growing up, going through your teenage years, going through your 20s, 30s, how has success changed for you, and what do you define as success to you today?
Gosh, that's a big one. I'm just going to wipe a little tear. I feel quite a lot of compassion for my young adult self who didn't understand success and really had a borrowed or inherited view of what success was, which was a good job, earned a certain amount, and you felt security. And I was in the design industry. There was no security. It was a nasty environment where you weren't thin enough, pretty enough, successful enough. And this was before we had Instagram. Heaven help us now. And now success is, am I real? Have I released any build-up? Like, when I'm quite proud of myself when I release, I have a good cry, when I go, oh my gosh, there's a bit of tension in here. I'm just going to go for a walk along the beach and scream at the waves for a little bit and have that insight to go. Like, that's success for me, is being aware of myself and aware of the tide going in and out, not being scared of the low tide, not being overwhelmed of the high tide, and being real enough to just be honest with myself and others. That's success.
Yeah, I love that reflection there. You know, awareness and self-reflection is success, because when we use that, we grow. We continue to grow. We continue to learn more about ourselves, and that's just so important as we kind of walk the path as we move forward. Yeah,
because it's a journey, not a destination, right? It's an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah. Can I ask, throughout your life, who's been your greatest teacher?
Oh, my kids. Oh my God. I mean, toddlers are so real, aren't they? I mean, there's that certain joy in that gorgeousness of saying whatever. How does a baby come out, Mummy? And all of those gorgeous questions that you got. There's that joy of that, but then in teenagers, it's the joy of them making it quite clear when you stuff up, either verbally or emotionally. Yeah. And you know, my husband is he's an incredible support. He's an incredible frustration. He's an incredible partner. He's an incredible reason to keep learning how to keep talking. because, we fall back into silence sometimes. We fall back into talking over people sometimes. So we just got to keep learning and listening and learning and listening. And then having those people in their world. I've got a couple of girlfriends who always surprise me by pointing out my strengths and aren't afraid to tell me when I'm really not doing a great job of it.
Yep. That's a good definition of friends, isn't it? People that will lift you up and identify your strengths and kind of champion you, but also kind of, just remind you when, you could be doing a little bit better, or you might not be being the best version of yourself.
Yeah. And that can be as subtle as, hey, have you read this book? or
how to be the best friend.
Yeah. What about you, Steve? What's your biggest lesson that you've brought through the world, or the biggest piece?
Look, I always say the greatest teacher for me has been my mum. My mum is a phenomenal life coach. She worked over 30 years in the disability sector. She's a virtues facilitator, and she is the rock of our family. And she's always, if you've always got an issue or something and you're talking to her, and you might be in a frame of mind where you're heading down a path that you probably don't want to head down in from a mental perspective, and you might be focused on something, but she's got a real good knack of kind of asking some really good questions and having that curiosity. And sometimes you don't want that, right? Like, as a person, when someone starts asking questions, you go, no, I want to stay in this point. No, don't get me into, compassion and peacefulness and thoughtfulness and all that kind of stuff, because we get trapped we want to stay in this kind of environment. But my mum, for all our family, for the grandkids, for my siblings and I, and anyone that is in her world, just has this knack of being able to be quite diplomatic, being quite real at times. And, sometimes my mum will, she's really passionate about something if she gets a bit cross, or she gets a bit, because my mum's not one of those people, but sometimes I'll say something. And recently she said to me, Steve, you've got to know your worth. I hope you know how worthy you are, the strength that you've got in being you, right? And she got quite, not cross at me, but quite forceful. And I was like, it was a day when I was like, not feeling great about myself, and I was a bit unsure on a few things. And she just said that to me, and I walked away from that, and I just went, I needed to hear that, And so that's why I say my mum has been my greatest teacher. And she's taught me so much, and she will continue to teach me, and she will continue to teach me long after she's gone. But I've said that, she's not going anywhere anytime soon. But I gave her, when I was presenting at her retirement village, I gave her a hug, and she's like, oh, that feels good. And, isn't that parents, right? Isn't that mums? Isn't it just, my stepdad was a great hugger as well. And just being able to just kind of feel, and it goes back to your point through this conversation, Nicky, about feeling safe, feeling heard, and feeling accepted, and feeling that you can be you. And from a parent perspective, that's all absorbed in one of those really loving hugs that we get from our parents. And I know not everyone gets loving hugs from their parents, and I get different loving hugs from my dad than I do from my mum. And we're all different, but just, sometimes, as everyone says, I just want my mum, and it's something that kids and teenagers, as we grow up, we don't understand that we're spending the most amount of time with our parents that we will ever spend in our life over the years that we live at home. And I think over time we go, like, even when my teenagers have said things, or we've gone through some tough moments together, I always sit there and I go, you will think back one day and you'll go, I wish I went on that day trip, or I wish I had one more holiday. with my dad or my mum or my parents. Like, you will, I know you don't understand that now, but you will understand it in the future, that the most precious thing that you've got now is time with your parents, and time with the people you love. And that time isn't it, it's time that runs out.
Yeah. It's time in a tribe that is so integral to us feeling good. We just don't understand when we're in it. You know, that unconditional tribe that you can get in a family unit is so special.
Yep, that everyone's got their back, that you've got support, and that the biggest thing is, and I, as a mental health first aid instructor, is very much around your community and your environment, and knowing that you're not alone. And in these tribes, and they don't have to be biological tribes, they can be friends and they can be workplaces, but wherever you are, you need to be part of a community where you feel like if you need help, if you're feeling alone, that you need just someone to talk to, that there is someone there to talk to, you know. And that's what we need to do for each other, is to lift each other up, to be there when we need, you know, when we each need it, and just help us kind of, you know, deal with that tidal flow, as you say, the waves coming in and out, and being there in the good times and the bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Nailed it.
Yeah. Nicky, one last question I want to ask you. If you cast your mind forward and you're sitting with your 100-year-old self, what do you think she's going to say to you?
Oh, God, that got me good, Steve. You never stopped trying. You never stopped opening your eyes to where you could grow. And I'm proud of you for doing that.
Oh, that's a big word, proud, isn't it? You know,
it's a hard one to use that doesn't sound condescending or belittling. I'm trying to learn to use it more. Beautiful.
I love that reflection. Now, Nicky, for those that want to connect with you in regards to your coaching, talk to you more around parenting, or just connect with you personally, what's the best way for them to do that?
So parenting coach Nicky Rasmin is my handle on Instagram and Facebook. I've got a lovely little ebook, if anyone's interested, on the top 5 tips for getting your teens off their screens without the screams. A little bit of fun, and I try to bring a little bit of irreverence and fun into what we do, because it's not, it doesn't need to, it's hard enough without having some fun, right? So if you're interested, reach out, send it to you. Be forewarned, it starts with you. And just follow along and reach out. Happy to help anyone who's having one of those days where they just think, have I lost them? Will I ever get a hug again?
Yep. And knowing that we all go through that we are sometimes, as you say, a hot mess at times, and we're all kind of like that infant growing up and kind of standing up, holding onto the couch, letting go of the couch, falling over and getting back up and doing it again and again and again. And over time we perfect it, but we never become perfect.
No, we just move on to a bigger piece of furniture that's harder to hold on to, right?
You and I both love a good analogy.
Yeah, you got to keep smiling through it.
Nicky, I'm really appreciative and grateful for your time. I think there's been some absolutely amazing insights. We've had some great conversation. I think there's going to be some really relevant content there, some tips, some techniques, and some information to probably, if nothing more, allow parents of teenagers and kids to know that they're not alone, that they're all going through the same journey that we all are, and no one's unique. It's very common. So I just wanted to thank you. It's been amazing to catch up, and also express my gratitude for your, obviously input and your part and role in my journey, because, from a coaching perspective, I've found it's been great to have you as someone that I can kind of connect with and resonate with, and your style is fantastic. So thank you.
Steve, thanks so much. I mean, it's mentoring and supporting is always a gift far greater that I receive. And thank you so much for having me on today. It's been a joy hearing about your beautiful folks and learning more about your family. And I wish you luck with that 17-year-old and the 15-year-old as they move through. And I'll perhaps see you on the other side of Teenagerville in a couple of years. We'll lift a teacup to each other and have a good giggle. But thank you.
And we can kind of complete that IKEA manual for other parents.
That's right. Yeah. But will it be a Billy bookcase or will it be something a little more sturdy? I don't know. It's just.
I think it's one of those things that it'll be this big stack of those kind of memes out there, or my kids say, is it meme or mem or whatever it is? They always correct me, but it's the big pile of papers that is like, how to understand this or how to understand teenagers,
and then it'll
or
just
whatever
come
it is.
toppling over.
And this is just volume 1. So volume 2's down here, volume 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's you've also uncovered a really beautiful point. We're not here to understand and label our teens. We're just here to support and guide and hold space for them.
That is a perfect way to end, I think. So thank you, Nicky, and I'm looking forward to continuing to connect and and share our stories on parenting.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Steve. Have a beautiful day.
You too.